We start with the wildfires burning across the country. There are 3 burning out of control in New Brunswick. Premier Susan Holt is warning there isn't any reprieve coming in the forecast.
We know that the hot, humid, windy weather is going to continue for the foreseeable future. It was hotter today. I think Bathurst recorded higher temperatures than we've seen in some parts of Florida. So we need to take all possible precautions to avoid the spread of the existing fires or the starting of new fires.
The province's Natural Resources Minister says an additional 30 firefighters from Nova Scotia and PEI will be arriving, and some additional help from the state of Maine. There are 5 wildfires burning out of control in Newfoundland and Labrador, including a new, rapidly growing wildfire that Premier John Hogan said could cause power interruptions. He also said the Canadian Armed Forces is deploying 80 firefighters. Eleanor Olszewski is the Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience. Thank you very much for joining us. I just want to start with, can you bring us up to speed on what the federal government is doing to assist right now with the raging out-of-control wildfires?
Absolutely, Katie. And let me start off by thanking you very much for having me on the program today. And I would also like to just take a minute to thank the Canadian Armed Forces, first responders, firefighters, everyone that's been actively involved in fighting these terrible wildfires over the last number of weeks and often putting their own lives at risk. It is so very much appreciated.
And so in terms of the federal assistance that is taking place right now, can you bring us up to speed on what that looks like?
I surely can, Katie. We are monitoring the situation all across the country, and I can tell you that we have had active requests for federal assistance from the provinces of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland and Labrador. And our government, our officials, and also myself in my capacity as Minister of Emergency Management, we're in constant contact with our provincial and territorial partners. We are checking with them to see what their needs are, and we are ready to assist whenever we're called upon to do so. And so in the province of Manitoba, the request for assistance was with respect to really more humanitarian support. And so that was things like shelter, food and water, and transportation. That's the recent request. In Saskatchewan, we have armed forces personnel helping actively with fighting fires, and we also supplied helicopters. And with respect to Newfoundland, we have deployed the Canadian Armed Forces as well as the Coast Guard, and a number of other partners are being mobilized to help, not just with evacuations, but with firefighting and with delivery of services as well. So really, Katie, our top priority, not just in these jurisdictions, but across the country, is to make sure that Canadians are kept safe.
So those are requests in this moment from 3 different provinces. They're all very different requests. I'm very curious, even though it's not new for the federal government to step in and assist with this, is this really the new normal?
I think what we're seeing, Katie, really because of the effects of climate change, drought, hot, dry conditions on the ground, what we're seeing is this likely is the new normal, that there will continue to be devastating wildfires across the country. And I think it's going to be really important for us to invest in making our communities more resilient. And that's one of the things that Prime Minister Carney actually was focused on when he added community resilience to my portfolio. So, you know, Katie, right now the focus is on evacuating people, firefighting, keeping people and keeping families and their homes safe. But we will also be looking at when it's time to build back these communities, we'll be supporting them and we'll be assisting them in building back better. And that means building, for example, with using fire-resistant materials and making sure that we take other steps to proactively make sure that we reduce the risk of wildfires.
When you talk about the community resilience aspect of your portfolio, I'm curious, I know that this government is very new, but when you look at other countries that are dealing with similar challenges when it comes to extreme weather and wildfire seasons, is there another place that's doing something right that Canada could learn from?
I think, Katie, we can always learn from other jurisdictions. Like, no matter what the circumstance, we can always learn. Circumstances are different from place to place. Circumstances are different depending on fire behavior, on the resources that you have at your disposal. So certainly I'm always open to learning what we can from other jurisdictions. I have to say, though, that there are a number of provinces across Canada that have robust firefighting systems in place already, such as Alberta, such as British Columbia. And really, in our country, what we find is there are some other jurisdictions like Saskatchewan and Manitoba that aren't as adequately resourced as other provinces. And so, one of the things that I'm looking at is what we can do to make sure that in our role as coordinators of the federal emergency response, that we don't leave any stones unturned and we see what we can do to improve the coordination at a federal level, particularly for jurisdictions that struggle more than others, and also particularly for communities in remote areas. And you'll know there were a lot of issues with respect to evacuation of First Nations peoples because they lived in remote areas in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. It was very difficult to evacuate from those communities. And so, I'm just really pleased. One of the things that we've done really well, I think, is evacuate a large number of people without loss of life or limb. And for that, I'm particularly grateful.
Do you see it as a federal government responsibility to ensure that some provinces that might not have the resources they need versus other provinces, is it the federal government's job to step in and maybe top up those resources so perhaps those provinces that might not be as equipped and ready for wildfire season are ready to go?
Yes, Katie, and it's a good point. It's actually exactly the way emergency management works at the present time. And so once the resources of the province or territory are exhausted, it's at that point that they call on the federal government for help. And so we can provide that help, in the middle of a situation, as we have been doing, but we also need to assist communities in working on the resilience piece so that when next year's wildfire season comes along, our communities are a lot better equipped to handle those situations.
The last thing I want to ask you about is an issue that has sort of come up across the Canada-US border. As you are aware, some American lawmakers have sent letters or complained to Canada's ambassador to the US, Kirsten Hillman, saying that wildfire smoke from Canada has come across the border and that it's ruined some summers in, communities in the United States. I'm wondering what you think of those complaints and what's your message to those American lawmakers?
Well, it's interesting. Wildfires are a global problem, and in fact, there are wildfires in California and many parts of the United States at the present time. We'll expect to see smoke coming across our border from their fires. And what it really tells us is that collaboration and cooperation between countries that border on one another is particularly important. And I'm really happy to say that the United States, together with Canada, signed on to the Kananaskis Wildfire Accord. And that's just an example of cooperation between the United States and our country in an effort to better deal with wildfires. And, the other thing I would add to that, is I don't want to get too caught up in the smoke aspect, firefighting is actually an area where we've had incredibly good cross-border cooperation with the United States. United States has sent firefighters to Canada. There are American firefighters here at the present time. And of course, Canada's done the same with respect to wildfires in the United States. So, contrary to, to what the letters alluded to, there's actually incredible cooperation between the jurisdictions. And as I say, it's just an example of how wildfires are a global concern and they need international cooperation.
Minister Olszewski, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Katie.